Pasta, pasta, pasta. Today, tagliatelle from the north of Italy in Emilia Romagna and fileja from the south of Italy in Calabria. I'm gonna teach you how to make these two staple and delicious pastas that you're gonna wanna make with your family all year round. Hello everyone, I'm Chef Sabrina. I teach you cooking and baking techniques through fun and delicious recipes. So if you're into that, please consider subscribing and ring the bell. And let's get started. So, I'm gonna make, like I said, two types of pastas, one from the north and one from the south. So we're gonna start with the one from the north of Italy. And again, I'm gonna put the recipe on my website and information about where to find semola and 00 flour on the description below. Okay, I'm gonna start with tagliatelle from the north of Italy in Emilia Romagna. And Emilia Romagna is where my family from my father's side lives. They live in Ferrara. And tagliatelle is basically the one that you would use for tagliatelle with ragu alla bolognese, with bolognese sauce. That is the main type of pasta that you would use with a bolognese sauce. And it's the same recipe also that you can use for your lasagna with bolognese sauce and bechamel. So with this, you have basically everything. Now, of course, know that just like with anything in Italy, depending on the family, depending on the region, depending on the city, even like the smaller, everybody has a different recipe, okay? This is my recipe. It's gonna be on my website, but know that you could substitute some yolk for whole eggs or add a little bit of semola. I'm gonna talk more about this, but let's get started on the nitty-gritty. Now, I'm sure you've seen in a lot of videos people that put the flour on the surface, on the table, make a little volcano with a little hole in the middle. They beat the eggs, add the eggs beautifully, everything, it's gorgeous, and they add the flour little by little. If you've tried this before, most likely the first times you've failed in the sense that you have egg running around all over your table. Has that happened to you? I'm sure it has. So I don't think my nonna would be very mad at me if I actually made it in a bowl, in a container. It has, I mean, why not? I can do the same process but contained so I don't have a mess. Once it all comes together, then I transfer it to my table and I finish kneading it. So the ingredients: 00 flour, egg and egg yolks. I have like 4 yolks and 1 egg, and then some salt, okay? Please, please, please don't forget the salt, to the point that I'm just gonna add it now, okay? Because we wanna season our pasta. We want to make sure that it's seasoned at this moment, and also when we boil it, and then when we condiment or when we use the sauce, we season as we go so that the seasoning is inside our food and not just on the surface. So I'm making my little same volcano. Actually, it's like an inverted volcano now that I think about it. And then I have my eggs here. I'm gonna give them a little whisk just so that I make my life a little bit easier and I don't have big yolks floating around. And now I'm just gonna add it to the middle, put it in the center. And now I'm gonna start mixing in a little bit of flour at a time. I'm gonna incorporate all of the flour. You're gonna see that it starts to become pasty, obviously, harder to mix. And at this point, I'm gonna start incorporating everything else with my hand. Just know that if you wanted to add, say, powdered saffron to your pasta, any spice or herbs, the moment would be to the eggs, okay? To the eggs, not to the flour. That's very important. All right, so when you see that you can no longer continue in the bowl, then you transfer it to your surface. And just know that if it's very dry outside, maybe you need to add like a little drop of water. If you see that it starts to stick, you could also add a little bit of cooking spray like I do with my breads. And then you use this part of your hand to knead it, okay? Now, if you see that, for example, it starts to get really tough, then stop, give it a few minutes, and then continue until you have a very smooth surface and you see like little bubbles all around it. And then once you're done, then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna wrap it up and leave it on the side for about 30 minutes before we roll it. If you don't have time, I guess you could try, but it's gonna be at this point really tight. And so we actually wanna give it a rest so that the gluten relaxes and it stretches beautifully, okay? And it makes our lives much easier. So in the meantime, while this rests, I'm gonna cover it with plastic wrap. And while this rests, we'll make the other dough for the fileja from the south of Italy. ready to make our fileja. Or actually, depending on where you are in Calabria, it has different names. So it might be filatelli, it might be macaroni. I mean, they're different names, but it's actually a very fun pasta to make, especially if you have kids. You can put them to roll them by hand. You'll see. It's actually quite nice. 3 ingredients again: semola, salt, and water. So let's salt our pasta. Always salt our pasta. And then water. Now, this one, I have to admit, I will give you the recipe, but depending on how the weather is where you are, you might need a little bit more or a little bit less. So let's start by adding water in the middle, and by hand, we're gonna start mixing. Now, no, and you're gonna love me for this, when I've had to make big quantities of this pasta, I've actually done it in my KitchenAid machine with the paddle attachment, because it comes together beautifully like that. But since I'm making a very small quantity, then I'm just gonna do it by hand, so I show you how it is. Now this will be enough for, actually, depending on who you invite. If you invite my family, this is enough for like 1.5 persons. If you invite normal people, it will be maybe like 4. But anyway, as you can see, I start adding water and I start putting it together, turning my bowl, okay, until I feel that it starts becoming a little dough, okay? Don't do it all at once because, well, semola absorbs a lot of water, but you don't want it too sticky either. You want it soft because you're gonna roll it by hand, but you don't want it sticky. And the other thing that you have to know is that because it absorbs a lot of water, but it is actually a coarser or a harder wheat, it takes a little bit. Like it absorbs water, but like not immediately. So maybe you think it's not enough, but you just have to give it a minute or give it a few seconds before you add more. Like when you think you need more, stop and be like, let me see. Because it comes together really, really easily, really fast. It's a beautiful pasta dough to make because it's so simple. But like I said, it hydrates a little bit slower. And so you have to be careful not to add too much at once, okay? This is done. Like, I didn't even have to cut the video. You've seen me make this from start to finish. This is it, my friends. This is it. Same thing, I'm gonna wrap it now, let it rest. It's good, right? And then I'm gonna teach you how to roll it. Are we ready to make some tagliatelle? All right, I already rolled some of the pasta and it is perfect. So I have my pasta here for the tagliatelle, my pasta machine, maybe you have the one from the KitchenAid and that's perfect as well. I have the attachment to make the tagliatelle, even though you can cut it by hand. And then I have just a sheet tray with a kitchen towel where I'm going to have my pasta once it's done. And then I have some semola. The semola is just in case if you need it because your pasta is too wet. However, if the pasta is well made, you don't need anything. But don't use flour if possible because you don't want to add flour to the recipe. I'm going to work with little pieces, so I'm going to unwrap my dough, cut a piece, and then I'm going to wrap what I don't use, okay? It's important. Don't let it out in the open like that because it will dry out on you. So I'm just gonna give it a little stretch with my hand and then I'm gonna roll it a bit. I don't have that much space. Let me put this here. All right. Because I wanna make it thin enough, I just wanna roll it a little bit so that I can put it through my machine. And the machines have numbers. And so you turn the dial as you thin out or as you roll your pasta, and the machines, they all have different numbers. And so the lower the number, the wider or the more open the rollers are, so the thicker your pasta is, and that's how you start. You start with number 1, and then as you go or as you increase in numbers, actually the rollers come closer together, so they close the gap and they stretch the dough even more, making it thinner. All right, So I'm gonna start with number 1. I think this should be enough. Let's see. So I gotta put my handle on. And then I pass it through here. Yes, it went through. And a lot of people, what they do is that now after the first one or the second, I don't know why they fold it in half and they pass it again. If your pasta is well made, you don't need to fold it. We actually had the dough resting for half an hour to relax. Why would I want to like keep folding it and keep developing the gluten? So I'm just gonna keep going with the second number. So from 1, I move it to 2. And here we go again, all right? And again, so notice that this process can go really fast. Number 4, there we go. It's gonna be such a nice pasta once it's done. It's gonna be delicious. By the way, if you wanna see how I prepare it and recipes, please follow me on Instagram because I put so many recipes up, so many posts, so many videos, like little clips of different techniques. And if you make any of my dishes, make sure you tag me. And also, as I go here to another one, just know that I launched basically a project called You Too Can Cook, and that's a hashtag. So if you tag me, please put the hashtag as well, because I love teaching you techniques because I want people to cook more at home. All right, let me show you. So know that if we are going to make a stuffed pasta with this, which is perfect for ravioli, capelletti, capellacci, tortellini, you want it thinner than if you are going to make the tagliatelle that we're gonna make today. Why? Because when you are stuffing pasta, you actually need to close a seam, and that seam is going to have 2 pieces of pasta. So it's gonna be double the thickness in your mouth. So you want it thinner so it's not so chewy compared to the other part of the pasta that has the stuff that's holding the stuffing, okay? So for tagliatelle, this is perfectly fine. I took it to number 6, but if I wanted to stuff it, then I would go maybe 1 or 2 more. Now I wanna show you something because this is just too beautiful. Not only the bubbles, but like, look at how much I can stretch it if I wanted to with my hand, all right? It is so flexible. It's so elastic. That's thanks to the yolks. And this just means that it's going to be a sublime, delicious pasta, that it's gonna cook super quick. Also, by the way, if you wanna learn how to cook fresh pasta, check out my video about that. And let me show you these bubbles because they're beautiful. Look at that. Look at how beautiful the pasta is. And now this one is ready to make tagliatelle. It's like this. Look at, you can see my hand. Look at how much it stretches. If I want to stretch it, look at that. All right, so before I pass it through the attachment to make the tagliatelle, I'm just gonna cut a little bit the tops to make it more square. And of course, these little pieces here, mal tagliate, meaning badly cut, they're delicious with soup. Or hello, just like olive oil and Parmesan cheese, or butter and Parmigiano, whatever floats your boat, but it's just so good, just like that. So cut the bottom and the top. And now I'm gonna put my attachment, easy, switch the handle to the tagliatelle and pass it through. And just like that, my friends, we get this beautiful, beautiful pasta. Look at that. So if my pasta had been longer, remember that the length of the pasta that you pass through will be the length of your noodle. So if you have like the huge long piece, maybe you want to cut it in half or in a little something smaller so that you don't go like that with your fork for like a minute trying to roll each noodle. All right, but this is perfect. This is just too pretty. So you saw how easy and how quick it is. Now I'm just gonna put it on my sheet tray. And if you think that it might be too wet, you can always add a little bit of semola on top, okay? Move it like that, maybe some semola to your cloth, and then you just dry it out. My grandmother, my nonna, used to freeze it actually and give us bags full of frozen tagliatelle. My mom would pull it out as, you know, as she wanted. But you can just dry it out. It will last basically forever. And then you just keep it in an airtight container or in a Zip-Top bag. You just go to bed, and then the next morning, if you see that they're still a little wet because maybe you live in a humid place, you turn the little nests or the little bundles over so that whatever was touching the cloth, that's probably going to be the part that is more wet, and just let it dry again. Also know that for lasagna, it can go directly in the oven, and that would be the pasta, the roll before you cut it. That's your lasagna pasta. And let's keep rolling until I'm done. Are we ready to make fileja? Now you're gonna be wondering, what is she doing with a hanger on the table? Well, to make this pasta and other Southern Italian pastas, you actually need a wire. So one way of finding a wire that it's perfectly straight and perfect for this is actually in one of these hangers. So you would just cut here and here. Or if you have any other wire, you can use that. I have two here. There are different sizes for different purposes. So I'm gonna use the shorter one. But you need something like this. You could also try with one of those long toothpicks like for kebabs, but the wire is really what's the key. Now I'm gonna work in little pieces so I can show you better. And the one that I'm not using, I'm going to wrap, okay? So that it doesn't dry out too much. Now the good thing about this and any pasta really is that if it's too soft because of too much hydration, once you roll it, it actually starts drying out. So you shouldn't worry too much about that. Now to roll the pasta, I'm gonna use a rolling pin, and I'm just gonna dust my surface with some semola because I don't want flour. I don't want to add flour to my pasta. So I'm gonna roll it a little bit, all right? And then, now know that if your pasta is actually too soft or too wet, it might stick to the wire, all right? So I'm gonna cut, you can cut like little pieces, all right? And so then, let me put this aside so that you see better. You grab your piece, all right? And you're gonna roll it a little bit around the wire, just like this, yes? And then with your hand, you just go back and forth. It is that simple, my friends. And then you pull it out, stretch it again, and that's it. And now you have a hole in the middle and some gaps on the sides, and all the sauce is going to be in the pasta, and it's gonna be so freaking delicious. All right. The other way is simply by flattening out the dough instead of rolling it, and then cutting little pieces and making little snakes with each piece. You set them aside and you work in a production process. That way you don't have to make them all one by one. Then there are two ways of rolling it. You can either start from one corner and then roll, and this will give you more like a spiral opening, or you put it right in the center and then you roll. And this will give you a much longer opening all throughout the length of the pasta. So either from one corner and you roll, or you can also do it right in the middle and then you roll. Now these different ways of rolling it will change depending on where you are in Calabria, and we'll give them the different names like fusilli and fileja or macaroni, but honestly the end result is just as delicious and very similar as well. Look at these beauties, we're done. Tagliatelle from Emilia Romagna in the north of Italy, and fusilli or fileja or macaroni from Calabria in the south of Italy. So if you want to see how I prepare them and the recipe I make with them, check out my Instagram because it's all gonna be there. Remember that if you make them, tag me please, and use the hashtag #YouTooCanCook, because after seeing these techniques, you too can cook and you can make this at home for your family and friends. So I hope you make lots of fresh pastas. Follow me and let me know if there are any techniques or any other dishes you'd like to learn. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy lots of fresh pasta.